And this is probably the biggest business challenge we have today through the rest of this year and on into next year, is dealing with a tight labor market. It's different from what we were used to a few years ago. One of the economic statistics I monitor is the quit rate. How many people voluntarily quit their jobs? It is way up from what it had been a few years ago. Nobody quits a job in a recession, but they can quit today. So I was at the intersection of Carmen Drive and 72nd in Tigard, driving on Carmen, and in the space from 72nd to going over I-5 is less than a quarter of a mile, and I found 5 help wanted signs only on the right side of the street. So a lot of businesses trying to find workers. Let me give some advice to folks in both the business and employer side as well as the worker side. The first thing that I recommend is a business retention strategy. We often talk about recruitment and retention. I always put retention first. It is easier to keep a good worker than to go out and find a new good worker. So retention plan should begin with compensation. It needs to be in the ballpark. It doesn't have to be high. When I talk to business leaders, they often say, yeah, people leave because they get more pay somewhere else. And that is what the person tells the boss. I'm getting more pay. It is not the reason the person went looking for a new job. Why does a person start looking for a new job? Because the boss is a jerk. It is unhappiness with the first level supervisor that triggers job searches, which often result in a higher pay, and the employees being nice. It's not the employee who's a jerk most of the time. So the employee says, yeah, I'm getting more pay, instead of saying, you are a you-know-what kind of jerk, and take this job and shove it. Training for your first level supervisors is probably the most valuable thing you can do to de-jerkify your managerial rates. It's in your Funkin' Wagnalls. You can look it up. To de-jerkify the management ranks. Now, I'm not the guy to teach this. I don't do supervisory training, but there are people who are really good, and some of your lower level, first level managers are not really jerks. They're nice people if you get to know them, but maybe they've got awkward social skills. Maybe they've just got so many other responsibilities and so many other concerns that they don't give employees the attention needed, whatever. Some training can help. So that's on the retention side. Many businesses still need to do recruitment, and I'm going to suggest some non-traditional sources of workers. The traditional sources are, first of all, you tell your existing employees we're hiring, and they mention that to their friends. Or you put in ads. Well, if those traditional sources are working for you, fine. But why am I seeing 5 help wanted signs in less than a quarter of a mile if the traditional sources are working well? For businesses that are having trouble with those traditional sources, non-traditional sources. So as an economist, I say, who has a high unemployment rate? Minorities have a high unemployment rate. Native Americans, immigrants who are fairly new, after they've been here a year, they have a lower than average unemployment rate. But new immigrants, people in rural communities, if you can tap in to this broader community of people who historically have a high unemployment rate, you can get some good people. And I'm also going to say, look at the long-term unemployed. We have a lot of people, mostly men, who are in their late 20s or 30s, and they are spending their days in their parents' basement playing video games. They would have had a job, but they got discouraged in the recession. And they're sort of making do. Now, the typical employer, looking at a resume, sees 6 years without work activity, and the typical employer says, oh, I'm not going to hire that kind of person. Well, if you can be fussy, that's fine. But in today's tight labor market, maybe you can't be so fussy. And some of these people would have been good, solid workers if they had had the opportunity back in the recession. And as for playing video games, I talked to my kids who play video games. They're employed, so it's not an all-day long thing. But in their free time, they play video games. And they'll tell me, I was attacking over here, but then I got attacked over here, and I took some resources to build a factory to make more resources for the future. That's a real business decision, isn't it? Take resources from today, invest in the future. And at the same time, a guy I had an alliance with was saying maybe we ought to change the alliance, and my internal operations were going weird. I had to deal with like 5 things that were all urgent at the same time in a video game. Does that sound like a job? How many of you in the business world have had that? You got 5 urgent priorities. They all need attention. They're all critical. Some of these people playing video games, I think, could be good workers. So give them some consideration. Now, for those of you who are employees, let me give you a suggestion. There is never a better time than today to ask for a raise. All right. The managers here are like, oh, God, I can't believe he's doing that. But never a better time to ask for a raise. And promotion, let me say a few words about asking for a promotion. I have asked for promotions a few times, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. But I see out in the workplace 2 kinds of people. So imagine a job listing, and it's a promotion for a group of people if they could get the job, and the listing says, here are 5 requirements for this position. There'll be a guy looking at those 5 requirements saying, well, I've got number 1, I've got number 2, I know something about number 3, and how hard can it be to learn number 4 and number 5? So the guy applies for it. And there's somebody else looking at 5 requirements saying, oh, I've got number 1, I've got number 2, I've got number 3, I've got number 4, but number 5, oh, I'm only like 70% of the way to meeting the 5th requirement, so I guess I don't meet the requirement, so I'm not going to apply. It's really sad. But the people who are bold and not afraid of being embarrassed, they apply for the job. And because the people who are a little bit shyer are not applying, they don't apply. And that's how we get jerks in management, is promoting the wrong people. So if you're one of those people who's a little bit timid, a little bit shy, be bold. This is the time to ask for that promotion.